So you can't afford an Escalade, but you also can't stomach a minivan. Well, the soccer mom in ya might need a Yukon Denali. That's right beside me today I have a 2018 GMC Yukon Denali. This is the top trim level from GMC and the ultimate status symbol for the suburban housewife. You can take the kids to soccer practice with a little wine in your tumbler in absolute style in your Denali. Now, all joking aside, I haven't driven one of these in a while and I've always really liked these. I think GMC did a pretty good job on these things, but we are gonna decide if they hold up for the long haul. If you should buy one with 150, 200,000 miles on it, and if it's gonna last for another 100,000 miles. We're gonna take a walk around the outside, we're gonna talk about the common problems, and then we are gonna decide if the Yukon Denali is a buy or a bust. We're starting our walk around looking at that big old chrome grille up front, the signature of the Denali cars for so long. And I gotta tell you, style-wise, genuinely, I've made some jokes here today, but these things look awesome. Now, as these age, you are gonna wanna look at a few things, and of course, rust is number one. Get underneath, look at the frame, look at the rocker panels, pay attention to your wheel wells, and make sure that you don't have any big rust issues. And if you don't, you should be good to go. Just keep up with cleaning out underneath of it and don't let the salt get to it. This one is pretty clean. Now, other things to look out for is just take a good look at the paint and make sure that the clear coat isn't too crazy faded, anything like that. GMC did have some issues with that back in the day, so just make sure that you don't have a bunch of paint wear or anything like that. Headlights will oxidize as these age, but overall, I think these things still show extremely sharp and stylish for now being almost 8 years old. Under the hood of our Denali, we got the 6.2 liter V8. It makes 420 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. Now, those are pretty great numbers. That will move this thing with no problems. I've driven a bunch of these vehicles and power is never really a concern on them. Yeah, there's actually some vehicles out there that have more power than that, but it is plenty for everything you're ever going to need to do with one of these SUVs. Now, we're gonna go right off the bat and talk about the largest issue that you will find with these engine, and that is AFM, or active fuel management. If you do a quick Google search, you'll notice that GM, especially in their newest SUVs, has had major issues with this. And they had some issues back in the day, but weren't as prevalent as they are on some of the newer GM SUVs. Active fuel management just shuts down some of the cylinders of the engine when they're not needed, to save you some fuel mileage. In theory, great idea. In application, some of those parts are now weaker inside the engine and have excessive wear and things as the engines age. And you'll notice some ticks and different things, or sometimes we'll have actually like catastrophic engine issues. So that what you wanna do if you're looking at a used one of these, start it up, especially when the engine is cold, and listen for ticking. If you have ticking that doesn't go away as the engine heats up, then you probably have a part failing inside of the engine, and I would probably steer clear of that car. As you heard on this one, no significant ticking at all. The engine is running smooth, quiet, no issues, as they should. Now, since we're talking about engine ticking, the other common problem is exhaust manifolds. So you don't want to get these two things confused. The exhaust manifolds can have a tick that usually will go away as the engine heats up, and it'll seal then and the air won't escape and cause this ticking sound. This is not a major concern to me. It doesn't really cause any long-term issues with the car. It just sounds a little rough. And GM has had this problem for many, many years, and the cars will run for another 100, 200,000 miles, and it will really never cause you any major concerns. The last two problems with this engine are fluid related. One is oil, one is coolant. Water pumps can fail around 150,000 miles. This is not a huge expense or a huge concern as long as you don't let the car run out of coolant. You should be good to go. So just watch your coolant level, look for drips. The other one that you want to look for is oil drips. The oil cooler lines can leak a little bit as these age as well. So if you notice you're losing a little bit of oil, check those out. Now this engine is mated to a 10-speed automatic transmission, and this transmission has varying reports of reliability out there. I personally actually don't dislike them that much. This transmission was developed with Ford. I've seen a lot of GM SUVs and Ford vehicles make it to 200,000-300,000 miles on this transmission without any issues. The most common issue on these is the torque converter causing a shudder, having a just outright failure. Any of those things can happen. So on the test drive, just make sure it shifts through all of the gears as intended and very smoothly. Now this is a 4-wheel drive SUV and generally a pretty reliable system here. Transfer case could have an issue. Front differential could whine as they age, but none of those things are terribly common. Just change the fluids in them and you should be good to go for many miles. Overall, I actually really don't hate this powertrain all that much. They get a lot of hate out there on the internet, but I don't think they're quite as bad as what some folks out there say. And I've seen a lot of these SUVs, especially they were used for like limo services and things with 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles on the original powertrain. So you just got to keep up with the maintenance on them and you should be okay for a long time. Moving on to the interior of our Denali here, and you notice the steps presented themselves to you, and that can be a common issue on these. Not as common as Ford. Ford had a bunch of issues with their power running steps, but you got to keep them lubed up. You got to make sure that they work correct. They are a fairly expensive thing to fix, but a little bit of PB Blaster, a little bit of grease on them goes a long way to keep them operating as they should. Otherwise, in the interior, we are, like I said, in the top trim, the Denali, so we should be basically bathed in luxury in here, and I think that that is generally true. Most everything you touch is soft, and there's lots of stitched leather, things like that all around the interior, and it really is an extremely comfortable place to be. As far as wear and tear as these things age, there's nothing too crazy. Yes, your leather seats can wear out, crack sometimes on the bolsters here on the side, or the foam wears out. Dash cracks are not common, unlike the previous generation that had a lot of issues with dashes cracking from the sun. Everything in here has held up quite well. You will notice sometimes like the covers and things on your center console will break or feel a little cheaper as they age and wear a little bit, but really it's a nice place to road trip. Now, if I was looking at a used one of these from someone out there with higher mileage on, these are the things I would check. Heated and cooled seats are known to fail sometimes on these, so push those buttons, make sure they are working. The other is just kind of a glitchy infotainment system up here. They're not terrible, but they will glitch. Just kind of part of the technology on these older cars now. The other thing I would check, and this is not super common on these cars, but I always want to check it, is look at your headliner and around the sunroof up top and make sure that there's no water stains. The drains can clog and then either leak down onto your floor or just stain your headliner, things like that. So just make sure that your sunroof is working properly and there's no big stains up there. Moving on to our second row here in the Yukon. And this is where, if you've ever taken an Uber Black, you've probably sat, because these are one of the most popular cars for that. Very comfortable seat, still nice materials on all the door panels, things like that. If you're road tripping, you got a household outlet, you got heated seats and air controls. It's a really nice place to be. I really don't have any complaints. The seat's comfortable, and you got a fair amount of luxury. Now in the arguably worst third row in the automotive industry. There's a lot of bad ones out here, but Tahoes and the shorter Yukons like these, this is not an XL, have a truly abysmal third row that's only good for children or someone who doesn't need to put their feet on the floor. Because as you can see, this seat is basically sitting on the floor, and there is almost no room for your feet to actually sit. It is absolutely terrible. It is not for adults, and you would never put an adult back here unless it's a true emergency. There is some nice things, like you can flip this seat with a button here, and that's a little bit nicer. But otherwise, this is just for small children, and that's pretty much it. Now, the next thing to check if you're test driving one of these is the power lift gate. This is another semi-common issue with these And the used parts on eBay and things like that aren't that expensive anymore to actually fix this, but make sure that the power lift gate goes up and down as intended. So check that for sure, because it is a common issue. As far as space, you have essentially none if the third row is up on these cars. It's 1 foot of space, and that's all you get. There is buttons back here to power drop these rear seats and raise them, which is a nice feature if you are going to be bringing anything larger along with you. Out on the road now in our Yukon Denali, and this is the ultimate soccer mom. Forget a minivan, we are cooler than that. We are in our Denali, okay? And don't you forget it. These things have so much power from the 6.2. I got really no complaints there. We're in some tight traffic here today, so I really can't get on it like I normally would. Just a busy day out on the road, but you're not gonna have any complaints power-wise from the 6.2. So now we got plenty of power, so let's talk about fuel mileage. Now, most people who are buying a big old SUV aren't too concerned about fuel mileage. They know that they're not going to get like something great, and it's okay. These are rated at 14 and 22 out on the highway. Now, you will lose a little bit if you do the active fuel management disabler, but really not that much. It's a shame that they even needed to do that to the engines, because it doesn't save that much fuel mileage. Now, we are on a sort of bumpy back-ish type road here, and I got no clunks. I got extremely tight steering. It's fairly quiet inside. I don't hear much engine. I don't hear much of the outside, other than it's raining a little bit, so I do hear that. As far as suspension issues, yes, it's a GM front suspension. So at 150, you're gonna have ball joints, tie rods, things like that have gone bad, but that's typical of about every auto manufacturer. Now, as we're talking about suspension issues, one of the big ones is magnetic ride. These are magnetic ride. This one, I have no feelings of anything odd with it, but you could have a light on your dash from some issues with that. You could also just be able to feel it. Like if the suspension is bouncing a lot, one of the shocks have failed, things like that. It becomes pretty apparent it is something you have to fix. And unfortunately, that fix is usually not very cheap. Overall, as I'm driving around in this, I will say it feels pretty darn nice. I mean, it drives excellent. Like, it does not drive like SUVs of old. It is smooth. It soaks up the bumps. There's a lot to really love about these things. And I think you're getting close into the like Escalade level of luxury on these, but still significantly cheaper. Now, you also might have some of the Escalade problems, kind of luxury car stuff, with the magnetic ride and things like that, where you got a lot more tech going on in these. Back from the test drive, and now it's time to decide if the Yukon Denali is a buy or a bust. Test drive went pretty well. You do feel like a big baller rolling around in one of these. The market on these cars with 150,000 miles is somewhere around $18,000, depending on where you are in the country and the condition of the car, obviously. Now, I think you get a pretty awesome car for that amount of money, but even though it is a good value, there is a few things that I want you to look out for if you're looking at a high mileage used one of these. On that test drive, you are going to want to make sure when you first fire up the engine that you don't have any crazy ticking coming from the top of the engine. You might have that little exhaust leak that we talked about, but if it goes away once the engine's warm, I'm not too concerned about it. But if you have a ticking that keeps going on, that could be some of those AFM issues on the engine. The other is on the test drive, just make sure it shifts through the gears all really smoothly and that you don't have any real clunks or shudders or anything like that from the transmission. Lastly, just make sure that the suspension feels good. You don't have any crazy lights on for your magnetic ride suspension. These are one of those cars that are fairly tech heavy, and you are going to pay a little bit of a luxury car tax on things like that magnetic ride. However, all that being said, these, I do believe, are a slimline buy. I think that, yes, you're going to put a little bit more money into them as you do most tech-heavy cars or luxury cars out there, but I think that they really could serve someone pretty well over the long haul if the maintenance is kept up on them. If you're actually interested in one of these, this one has a little bit lower mileage, but you can check out the listing for it in the description down below. Now, if you have one of these and have had a good experience, I want to hear about it, or if there's something I missed, I want to hear about that too. I appreciate you guys following along. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.